Hey everybody, it's Norm from Tested.
And it's Jeremy from Tested.
Welcome to Projections, our weekly show about VR, because we're excited about virtual reality as, well, not just a games mechanism, but a computing platform.
That's right. And this week we saw Rift roll out their new Oculus Core 2.0, which I think more or less transforms the first experience you will have in the Oculus Rift if you get one this holiday, or for people who've had it for a long time. It's going to offer up some new options for how you can basically use just the existing Oculus platform.
So first, some defining of terms, right? What is the Oculus Core experience?
Sure.
Well, if you have, for example, a game console, you know, like your Xbox menu screen is how you access games, how you access the video content, and how you access your friends list. And in VR, Steam VR has Steam VR Home, and Valve has done many improvements to that over the years. But for the Rift side, on the Oculus side, I think they went too far with something that was more akin to a game console launcher.
It's very basic. I mean, what we've had for the past 2 years with the Rift is basically a storefront.
That's right.
That's it. It's a two-dimensional, it could be a Windows app, storefront. It's in a nice virtual environment, but not one you could explore.
Yes, and with Core 2.0, they've revamped that, and now it feels like a virtual space.
Yeah.
A real space that's yours and you can customize. So they're launching this as a beta, an opt-in beta. If you're a Rift owner, you can just go into your settings menu, click opt-in, you'll download it, and what you get essentially is a place you can teleport around.
Your new home space. Yeah. So it's interesting. Both Steam and Oculus both have a home space. Okay, there you go. And it's nice. It's nice to be able to move around a space, but it's even nicer to be able to customize it.
Right.
So they give you a library of free things that you get off the bat. You can drag and drop them around the environment, and you don't have to use them as intended.
Right.
Like one of the developers the project manager, basically created a mini golf, land using a bunch of things that you would never have used to create that.
Yeah, using like shelves as barriers.
They look like
mini golf.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can play something like mini golf or basketball because some of the objects, these 100 objects they've preloaded in, have physics properties. They're not just static objects. When you're modeling something, you put it in, you have to also imbue it with animations and also something that reacts to the game engine of this world. So there's a lot of potential there. And then there's also something they're calling the Dash, the Oculus Dash. This was announced at Oculus Connect 4. And this is separate from your virtual home environment because this is a menu system that now can live alongside your games.
Yeah, previously if you were in a game and you hit the Oculus button, it would bring up a menu, but it would also take you out of the game.
Yeah.
So you go to this white screen and you can return to home and launch another game if you want to, or you can see your friends' notifications and things. Now, you likened it to a augmented reality inside of a virtual reality, and I think that's apt. So what it is, it's basically no matter what game you're in, you hit the dash button, the Oculus menu button, it then will bring up inside of your game. It will keep you in your environment and augment this new system in front of you. And it's interesting because you can bring up a web browser, or you can see your monitors, your computer monitors. But then what's interesting is you can grab those monitors and pin them as new panels in your virtual environment.
Your Chrome tab.
That are persistent.
Your Spotify, any Windows item in your Windows desktop, which is already running in the background when you're running VR. You can pull out that pane and pin it and place it anywhere. So if I'm playing Elite Dangerous and I'm doing a long mission, I can have a Netflix window playing alongside my game. It's multitasking in VR. I think there's a lot of potential to this. They talked about how it's a lot of work on the back end with Windows 10, on the driver level with NVIDIA and AMD to get this running. And to learn more about just what's in Core 2.0 and the Dash experience, we actually went down to Oculus and sat down with Brandon Dillon and Nate Mitchell to chat with them about the new thing. All right, well, thanks for having us here in your HQ. You're showing off Core 2.0 today. How long have you guys been working on this?
We've been working on Rift Core 2.0 basically since we launched Touch. So we, once we had Rift and Touch and had this great VR platform, we really wanted to take a fresh look at how should this work systemically, right? Like as an overall experience of this sort of Rift platform software.
So it seems like you mentioned since touch, this is very much touch first. I mean,
Very
everything
much so.
is very much like I can now reach out and grab things, and it's very much, I almost need touch to complete the experience. Is it still gamepad compatible?
It is for a lot of the functionality. So a lot of the core stuff that you are already able to do with the platform in terms of launching applications and browsing the system menus still work just fine with gamepad. There is some functionality that really you need touch for it to be great, like the customization capabilities of Home, and those are things that you need touch controllers to do.
And I'm sure you guys think a lot about what computing, what being on a platform in VR looks like, not only this year, but going forward. When you guys started off with that bucket list, knowing people are going to have Rift, people are going to have touch, what was on that list? Yeah.
Oh, I think by far the most asked for feature, and the one that I was really excited about, was the ability to actually customize your home, right? Make it a space that belonged to you and reflected your personality and interests.
Yeah. And I think the other half of that also was bringing more of the power of your PC into VR and virtual desktop. There's been a bunch of great experiences in the ecosystem with developers have been building, like virtual desktop and big screen, that we've seen a bunch of use. And so sort of bringing some of that natively into the experience, being able to sort of access your desktop and your PC and the wealth of apps from anywhere was something we wanted to enable at a platform level that everyone could take advantage of.
I mean, you think of the analog as like a console, for example. We don't see a lot of console makers saying, we want to spend people spend a lot of time in menus in the console UI.
Sure.
Sure, if it's a way to like get a video playing or a way to get into a store, but you have that already. So are you thinking Home is a place that you want people to spend time in?
I think Home is really more of a manifestation of the platform as a virtual space, and it's not necessarily that that's a space that we want you to like spend all of your time. We really just want you going off and like exploring the wide world of like cool VR experiences. It's really about sort of that default space that you go into, have that being a reflection of yourself, being able to pull in things like your achievements or put on display like cool library items that you have for the virtual reality apps that you really like. It's less about sort of like spending all of your time there and making it your actual home, like your home base, before you go off into the world of VR.
As far as making a reflection of myself, right now you can do a lot with the content that you guys are offering at launch with the beta. How long until we're able to generate our own content to insert in that space? And is that something that you're even interested in philosophically?
Oh yeah, we definitely are. Like that's core to this central mission, right? Is like making it a reflection of yourself, right, in VR. We're hard at work. This is just the beginning. Like we've seeded it with some content that's like really high quality and really fun to play with. But I think the stuff that we all really get excited about here, and we're definitely investing in, is tools that allow you to bring your own items into the space.
Cool.
What do you see as the technical hurdles to that? Do those objects, is it about infusing them with physics properties or some type of interactive properties? Is it about the polish and how they look or how they integrate in this virtual space?
The not safe for work content? I don't know.
Definitely a concern, yeah.
There's a bunch of stuff, right? Like it's both the sort of, how you actually get those 3D assets into the experience. It's exactly the stuff that you're talking about in terms of like making sure that they have the right physical properties, that they simulate well, if they have interactive qualities to them, like specifying how those work and interface with all of the other stuff that you can bring into the space, right? We want to do more than just make it so that, yes, you can bring in a 3D model and put it in an arbitrary location, right? Like we want it to feel like an actual object that you bring into the space, and then do all of the like work to make that a really great part of the experience.
I mean, you have tools to make objects, sprites, and also animations, and with Medium. Is that the logical next step, or are you thinking of opening beyond that?
I think that, Medium's a really exciting use case in particular, I think, because, that's one of those ones where it's like the entire workflow can be in VR, right? Like you can be there, you can sculpt your model, you can bring it into Home, and then decorate your space with it. That doesn't mean that we would do that to the exclusion of traditional workflows or like other content sources. Like, we want to get a lot of stuff in there for sure. We'll be working on a lot of different ways for you to continue to advance your customization capabilities inside of Home.
Does Medium Home, do they share like a graphical base? Is that cross compatible already?
It's actually interesting. So Home is built, the new version of Home is built on top of Unreal Engine, which has a lot of really sophisticated lighting capabilities. It has this kind of like physically based renderer that it uses underneath of the hood. And one of the cool things about Medium is that it's actually also a physically based system. So like when you're sculpting and that kind of stuff, you can actually choose the material properties of the layers that you're working on and imbue some of that sort of realistic rendering quality into it. So they actually will meld really nicely in that respect. Like a Medium object won't look look like an arbitrary, 3D model unlit or whatever. Like we can actually really make it situated in the experience, like you're bringing a real sculpture into your space.
It seems like having the web now available in my VR space is kind of a big deal, and it could be very powerful if I were maybe to go online and find an image that I wanted to just grab and throw into my home space, or even a 3D model if I went to a depot of some kind where I could download a 3D model. Is that the kind of thing that we could potentially do in the future? I mean, is that on the roadmap?
I love that idea. I think it's a really cool idea. I definitely think that when it comes to the interplay between Worlds and Dash, there's a lot of interesting stuff for us to explore there.
There was an interesting comment on Reddit when Dash was announced where why not put a webcam in your VR space and lay that feed into your VR space so you can constantly actually see yourself and anyone that might be coming into your room. That's an interesting thing that you can do already.
We've seen a ton of sort of like creative, you could call them like hacks, sort of using sort of Dash as a platform, because anything you can basically do on your desktop, you can suddenly now bring into the experience.
Right.
So we have folks, there's the really simple use cases that always come to mind is like someone's like working and they're like, hey, I'll just like toss the game on, like they're just like watching the Warriors while they're, coding or sculpting in Medium or like whatever it is. But we also have some more creative stuff. One of the developers on the team actually has put a webcam over his keyboard so he can more easily touch type from within VR, so he could just like get a frame of reference. Another dev on the team, I think, hooked up, or someone mentioned this to me, a webcam to their baby monitor. So they were actually like keeping track of the kid while they were in VR, just like, floating on a plane while they're going through their experience. So like, we're really excited for folks in the community to come up with like totally new use cases. It's part of the reason we're going out with the beta now to get a bunch of feedback, and the stuff that's somewhat most exciting, we're going to see maybe we can make some of that stuff natively integrated.
I love the idea that you can pull out a window, whether it's web browser or a Twitch feed or something.
Exactly.
It doesn't have to be in the confines of a virtual desktop per se. You have that, but even all those are still in the paradigm of a Windows-style rectangle box. What does an app that's native to VR, native to home, start looking like that doesn't necessarily have minimize, maximize, your X buttons, and is that something you guys think about?
Yeah, I think one of the really cool things about the way that Dash is built is like separate from the virtual desktop functionality is that it's actually implemented using React VR, which is our framework. It's an extension of React, which is like something that we've used across Facebook, and lots of people externally use it as a development platform for software, right? And React VR is really this opportunity to like think deeply about how the interaction paradigms and user interface details like differ in VR, and what can you do beyond that basic kind of 2D surface. So I think we'll see as that advances, like that we're bringing a lot of those capabilities into Dash and really kind of making that a robust tool for building like VR native interfaces.
I know multiplayer is on your roadmap as well, like getting more people into the space. Will they be able to collaborate on actually building out the space?
Definitely. Yeah, that's one of the use cases I'm most excited about. I think it starts to get into this interesting space where it's not just like your home, but you have these other spaces that can actually function as sort of like community hubs, right? And one of the things that seems most exciting to me about like having a virtual hub like that is that ability to collaboratively construct it and share it with people.
So Dash runs the underlying layer. It pops up no matter what app you're in. Home is still a separate app, though. You don't press a button in Home. You still close and launch apps. Is that just an overhead, minimum spec requirement?
Yeah, it's interesting because it's not exactly a normal app in the sense that it is kind of like the core experience that runs when you put on the headset. And to a certain extent, like I think one of the exciting things is our ability to actually kind of flatten some of those app boundaries, right? Like really simple examples of that are the thing where now you can actually get a cartridge of your application, put it in the console, launch it, and then hop into the game. I think there's a lot of interesting ways that we can explore kind of like breaking down that wall and thinking of it less as sort of like discrete apps and more as sort of an ecosystem, like a manifestation of the platform that's connected.
Home is something that Jeremy's going to customize, I'm going to customize, a lot of consumer-facing tools. Are you also thinking about how businesses or brands can set up home spaces so that other people can share, and it's not necessarily one person, maybe a team of people building something for their company?
Yeah, I think it's super interesting. I mean, obviously, like there's in between those two things, right? There's like VR developers, right? Who we'd love to be able to create easy ways for them to get their content and bring it into the experience. But I'm sure there are actually a bunch of really interesting potential use cases with people building items that don't necessarily want to build a full VR experience, but would happily build some 3D models to help populate the experience with. And I think we'd certainly be interested in that.
And then also, you guys started off with Core 2.0 a year ago with touch being the interactive model. We're still, it's hand presence, but it's also still laser pointers and not typing on keyboards. How forward-thinking are you about different interaction models, maybe beyond touch? Is that built into Core right now? Is it supported? Or when that comes, is it time to revamp Core again?
The future of VR hardware is there's a lot of exciting stuff on the horizon, I don't think we're ready to talk today about what the specific details are. But really, what we've been doing is spending a lot of time thinking about this as a foundation for our VR platform. That as we bring on those new technologies, that they'll drop right in and be a cohesive part of the experience.
What do you anticipate the attach rate being for this beta, in terms of all of your customers?
We have different bets internally.
Yeah. We have a spreadsheet.
I mean, it seems like it doesn't feel like it's rough to me. It feels really ready for prime time.
Thanks.
It's good to hear.
Calling it beta for safety reasons. I mean, I could see it being over 50%, even more.
We'll see. I'm excited to. We are. We're shipping it early for a couple of reasons, right? Which is that we think it's reached this point of utility where it's really compelling. And there's a bunch of stuff that we could potentially go pursue from here, right? There's a ton of value. We have a very long list of all of the cool features that we want to build for the experience, and we're at that point where the most useful thing would actually be getting users involved and helping them, the community guide us and what's really valuable to them and where they want us to put our focus first. There's also there's a lot of cool new technology that we've built from the ground up to support this. We've been working really closely directly with graphics card vendors to AMD and NVIDIA have provided low-level support for us to do some of the Magic Dash integration stuff. And so making sure that we're compatible across the widest variety of systems and making sure that this is a really robust thing before flipping the switch and putting everybody on it is an important thing for us to spend time getting right.
Do you foresee that beta period being a matter of weeks or months?
I think it really will depend on what the community reaction is and what we think is sort of the necessary threshold in terms of it being a robust enough experience for the largest number of users to flip the switch.
And in terms of continual updates, what do you anticipate the cadence for that to be?
Oh, these are live products. We're going to keep working on them. We'll be pushing new versions regularly that'll have small incremental improvements, and we have in the pipeline some large features that will bring on major new functionality, and you'll see a regular cadence of both of those things.
Yeah. All right. So it's clear that they are hugely passionate about what they think VR as a computing platform can be. And I don't think we're at the end-all be-all. This is not it's still the early days.
They're very clear about this being a foundation for where they want the VR experience to go.
Right.
And that this really is just the beginning. I think if this opens up a problem, Core 2.0 and Dash and having the ability to bring the web now into any VR space, if there's a problem with that, the problem is that it just opens up so many questions. It's going to make people want things now that simply aren't possible yet.
Yeah.
So they're calling it beta. Maybe that's part of their reason, But I said to them, I want to bring images into my home space, and that seems like a natural thing to be able to do. Grab things from the web and just yank them into virtual reality.
That seems to be the biggest barrier right now, right? I like the idea that you have a virtual sandbox, and your sandbox and my sandbox is going to be the same for now. And I know on Steam VR, people have already been building up their own levels that you can download and subscribe to, a holodeck or some far out virtual land. And Oculus is still a few steps behind in that sense. But the foundation they've laid is solid, right? Physics objects, a library of items, the way you can even navigate through the items is fluid.
So you're talking about the home space?
Yeah, the home space.
I wonder how popular that'll be. It's interesting because I didn't even know, you had to tell me that Steam Home has this already. That you and I, and in fact a multiplayer version.
Yeah, social.
Where I can join your home space in Steam VR. I've never been inclined to do that.
But you've read Ready Player One. Isn't that what they do in Ready Player One?
I know.
They go to your clubhouse and I've decked it out with my virtual objects and my trophies, and here's my collection of games.
Yeah.
And isn't that the dream of I'm gonna drop in, Jeremy's not in his clubhouse, I'm gonna leave him a note, and then we'll make an appointment to play a game. is you don't think that analog of having a physical space is necessary in VR?
Maybe it's that it hasn't crossed that threshold of being able to customize it enough and make it something very unique to actually add an arcade, to add like a Super Nintendo on a TV that we could both play with some controllers or something like that. Then it becomes your space, and I would want to visit that. And it would be interesting to see that.
And that's my fear of how customized can you get. Yes, you can get innovative and you can make your mini golf course, but without the ability to import a model, people are already using things like SketchUp. They're using Tinkercad. Game developers are already building assets. There's repositories, lots of them. Google has them of 3D objects. If I can't bring those, or even 2D objects, like you're talking about JPEGs, if I can't even bring those into my virtual space, and I'm just using their basketballs, their blocks, their building blocks, then it's all going to be derivative. It's all going to be the same version of each other.
No, that's true. No, and I do agree with you. But we also saw some pretty innovative things that they did with those tools. And knowing user-generated content as we do, I think we're going to see some interesting things made with the tools that are given in the Rift. And I think that the tools in the Rift appear to be a little more, user-friendly or easy to create abstract things than maybe what they have in Steam VR.
And full credits, something like Minecraft. Literally building blocks, squares. You can do so much with that, and people want it. You're basically giving people a sandbox. It's just limited types of sand objects.
Yeah.
Right. I want more.
Well, and obviously the ability for me to come to your space in Rift too.
Yes,
so that's
social's coming for sure. And I think what we talked to them was about what is their philosophy? Is their philosophy creating a sandbox where they give you the toys, they give you the tools over time? And I think they're going to have that. They're going to want to encourage people to log in on a regular basis and get your new holiday pack of items to load up. And that's great. Or is their philosophy just an open sandbox where anyone can bring any of their toys into this space? And maybe charge for them, not charge for them. No microtransactions here.
That was my fear.
Yeah, and which is a great thing. They're not selling any of these objects, and I don't think it doesn't sound like they have any plans to.
They said they don't.
So that's good. But to your point, is this something people will use? It is something on paper I want.
Right.
And it sounds like, and maybe young people, kids who love Minecraft would love building a virtual play space, but is this going to be like Second Life? Is this the first steps in the metaverse?
Right. You had an idea back in the DK days that I think was really cool, which was that if you're put on your headset and I was already in VR, you could come and see me standing at some sort of console, and you'd be able to see what I was doing in VR.
Right.
And you'd be able to sort of engage with me from the outside of the game, but still in VR.
Layers of the Matrix.
Exactly. And I think that's where this is headed. At least I hope. I hope that you'll be able to come to my space and you'll be able to see me engaged in whatever I'm doing with a virtual headset on, standing there looking like a fool like I am in real life, but in virtual reality.
Yeah, your position's tracked, your motion's tracked, and maybe I have some type of projected version of what you're playing, and I'll tap that to join your game.
Exactly.
But then you're talking about server hosting, right? Then you're going to be a local host server. And right now, Oculus Home doesn't run. The environment closes the moment you jump into a game. It's not persistent.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about that. That's an interesting point. Maybe that does complicate my vision of what would be cool. But Windows keeps it persistent, at least it appears to. Like when you're in Windows Mixed Reality and you go into Space Pirate Trainer and then you go back to the home environment, the Cliff House, it's instantaneous.
Yeah.
So, and that concerns me because I don't necessarily want those resources being used to render this 3D environment and keep it in memory. So I'm okay with that. And I do like the Oculus Res D-Res effect that they use, and it's relatively fast.
And so I think overhead, computing power is the other thing that is a concern, right? And maybe why they're not letting people import objects to start. There is an indicator. Right now you can have a maximum of, I believe, 500 objects, that global limit. It's kind of arbitrary right now.
These are objects that you can drag into the world, sort of like Little Big Planet. I don't know if you ever played that, but that also, when you're making a game from scratch, you have a meter of how many objects and resources you can use in the world. And this is the exact same thing. They just cap it at a limit of objects, which is arbitrary because some objects are more complicated than others.
Yep. And they have a performance indicator, 3 dots, green, all good.
Yeah.
But that's something you have to take into consideration.
Right.
Yeah, because that's not something like once you open it up, then it's like if I build a really complex world and you load it up and you have a less powerful PC, then it's not going to be a good experience.
Right.
But the dash thing, that's the real multitasking with these pin panes. That's a game changer.
Yeah.
I think, and I can't wait to see what people are going to do with it.
It means it's going to mean faster transitions, right? You don't have to go back to home, quit a game. You can go straight from game to another game. But it also this ability to incorporate the web into any game. It won't make sense. Like with Superhot VR, you're not going to pin Netflix because you're going to be looking in every direction.
Right.
But in something like Elite Dangerous, it makes a ton of sense.
Yes.
So I'm actually very excited about that, and also not just for Netflix, but webcams or email. And it makes me think about now: do we need VR interfaces to the web that are more natural?
It's something I get hung up on is the user experience model, and we're still kind of grafting the desktop. The modes we interact with the desktop, which is high precision, mice and keyboard, and we're grafting these interaction models to the VR space where yes, we have hand presence, yes, we have finger pointers and laser pointers, but is that the most natural way to transition to VR? And I think you have to do that at the start.
Right.
And it's going to open up, I think, a lot of web apps that may have like a VR mode, perhaps. If I'm running Netflix, I want a mute button, a big mute button.
Big fat thing.
That I can press, that I'm not going to be looking at the bottom bar to press the volume button. Like, it's going to be considerations that every app developer is going to have to make.
When you pull these panels into your space and they're persistent, as you interact with the game, if you were to mouse over and point at one of the panels, you actually then
start activating it.
That panel now is basically like the top window.
Yeah.
And so it could potentially be game breaking. So
That's right.
You're going to have to think about where you place these panels and where they make sense.
Yeah, and also orientation too.
Yeah,
One thing that I found that may be a bug is that if I pin a window here, here, and here, but I turn around and press it, it rethinks that where Dash thinks is my front and where the game thinks is the front can be mismatched.
VR.
I know. It's layers and layers on top, and it really feels like early days, but this is an exciting release for Oculus.
I want to give them credit for keeping it Oculus because they could have made with a rethinking of the interface, this could have been heavily Facebook. And I don't see Facebook anywhere in what they've done here with this reskinning, this rethinking of the VR interface. And I give respect to Facebook for investing billions of dollars and then letting them retain their own identity. I think this is good.
Yeah, so if you have a Rift, go ahead, check it out, enable that beta, and let us know what you think in the comments below. On the Steam VR side, we want to put a spotlight on a game that's coming out next week. It's a multiplayer component to a Vive first-party release called Front Defense Heroes. So HTC, so they're separate from Steam VR. They're putting some money, some investment, just like Oculus is funding studios. HTC is putting some first-party releases, and one of their games is a World War II shooter, and it's a 5v5 multiplayer shooter. Think of it as like Counter-Strike, but in VR.
Sure.
And we got to play early multiplayer tests of this week. What'd you think?
I enjoyed it. It's an interesting locomotion mechanic. I mean, I suppose you could start with locomotion with any VR title. And this, I forget what they call it.
V-Move.
Thank you. And it's you basically press a direction and you go third person. And you see your character walk away from the camera. And as you tilt your controller, it controls what direction your character basically spins. So you're sort of driving your character.
Yeah.
And then when you let go, your perspective snaps to that place. Now that's interesting because it is comfortable. Obviously, and I think that's probably why they chose it.
But there's a disconnect.
And it allows you the teleportation. It avoids the problem of teleportation, which is important for a shooter.
Right,
right,
right. Because there's no cheating, right? So it's not where if I'm playing against an opposing team, I can just teleport behind that pillar, behind that car.
You don't want that.
You need to. Movement is a part of the gameplay and being vulnerable. We talked about this with From Other Suns.
Right.
So when you're actually in the first-person engaging mode, I'm looking down my rifle, I'm shooting around the corners. But if I want to move, you actually have to. Your character avatar has to move.
Yeah.
And it moves in third person.
Yeah. So the weird thing is. You can't see what your character sees. So as you come up to a corner, you kind of have to judge when you should stop because it's entirely possible you could walk around the corner and there's a bad guy there and you'd never know it.
Right.
So then you snap and then you realize, oh, there he is and he got the jump on me and he shoots first.
The developers were saying in some of their testing, people have memorized the maps.
Yeah.
And because it's a trade-off. So I would describe it as akin to almost a turn-based strategy game.
Yeah.
Because you're deciding, do I want to move 4 steps forward to this point or move to that point? Because if I make short jumps, it takes longer for me to do the jumps. But if I do it
Yes.
in one natural continuous sequence, it's faster, but I'm more vulnerable because I have zero awareness of my character.
Once the game progresses and you have a sense of where the bad guys are, you start to learn when to make those long treks and when not to.
Yeah.
You know, all that said, I actually really enjoyed it. I got to the point where I knew where to stop, and I was peeking around corners and taking pot shots. There's a number of weapons that you can choose from the loadout every time you respawn. Some of the rifles have really good, long-range accuracy. Some are just machine guns, and they have a widespread. You tried a sniper rifle that was...
Yeah, the sniper rifle was interesting. It was like looking at an LCD panel at the end of a model of a sniper rifle. It really wasn't, the optics weren't rendered properly to be really effective. But these are hit scan weapons. This is realistic World War II themed, and I really got that vibe of playing Medal of Honor, Counter-Strike back in the early thousands.
The Vive or the Vibe?
The Vibe, on the Vibe of playing those games and the intensity of doing a 5v5 competitive deathmatch game, but in VR.
Yeah.
And I know we have a lot of fun with multiplayer games and with like cartoonish-based games like in Rec Room.
Sure.
But when it's realistic looking and it's hit scan weapons, you definitely feel more adrenaline playing it.
That's interesting. I actually compared it as well to the paintball stuff in Rec Room, and I mean I probably have just as much fun in those. I think the tension comes from having the right loadout. And in this game, you really are limited to what you choose at the top. You can pick up a bazooka, but then you really have just the one armament that gets thrown in there. You can maybe carry another with your hand. So you want to use them very sparingly. And that's what sets this game apart is ammo is a real commodity. And so when you run out of ammo, I do like this as well.
The reloading mechanic.
You actually have to grab and press a button in order to release
your magazine.
The magazine, kind of like Onward, but a more simple version of it. And then you grab another one, and it's infinite ammo.
Yeah, from your belt, your virtual belt.
Yeah.
Same with grenades. You grab it off your belt. I like that it's all physics-based grenades.
Yeah.
Like it's not the aim, the reticle, and it goes and does the perfect balance. I am holding my virtual rifle in one hand, and I'm left-hand throwing my grenades, and I'm not a great left-hand thrower.
Yeah.
So many times the grenades are bouncing back, and there's a real intensity to the physicality of holding a virtual rifle and throwing grenades and crouching underneath a tombstone in a graveyard. That was thrilling, even though the mechanics these are 15-year-old type 5v5 games.
I really was crouching, but I think that there is a button combo that makes you crouch.
Prone, lets you jump.
I didn't even know about that, nor did I know about the jumping, combination. But that is in there. They're also adding a free locomotion mode that's just locked right now. I assume that will be available at launch.
Sometime after launch.
Okay. Well, I think people are going to want it because it's going to change the game dramatically.
Yep.
I think that's probably going to be the way that you play competitively.
Yep. No teleport, because I think that would break the balance of the game. But I love seeing more multiplayer shooters, right? And taking the things that are tried and true of classic PC games and console games and making it from the ground up with VR in mind and taking advantage of what it means to be present in a big space, having that physicality of your armaments on your body and communication, voice communication, spatial awareness, hearing enemies behind the walls was thrilling. I really enjoyed it.
I played it on the Rift. It does launch. It does play. They are focused on a 360 design right now, so they do not allow any kind of snap rotation. So if you are playing on the Rift, you're going to want a 360 setup with a third camera, or at least a two-camera setup that allows you to do a 360 rotation.
All right, and that does it for this episode this week. We'll be back next week with another game review and more to talk about in VR. Until then, see ya.